Hello, my name is Rod Kumimoto, co-founder and chief scientific officer of InnerPlant. I'm a plant biologist by training, which means every time I visit family and friends, I immediately get pulled to their yard to diagnose why their plants are looking bad. Luckily, most of the time, the problem is simple, and my advice is you just need to water your plants, Grandma. For a house plant or a home garden, this kind of one-on-one plant care works great. Unfortunately, large-scale agriculture is much larger. Farmers cultivating thousands of acres and millions of plants can't provide any one plant that level of attention, unless the plants could tell the farmers what they need. At InnerPlant, we have developed technology that allows plants to signal for help at the first sign of stress, effectively giving them a voice. This is the foundational technology to transition acre by acre agriculture to plant by plant farming. Look, farming is hard. Farmers face dozens of problems over the course of any one season. I come from an almond farming family in Central California. Growing up, I'd hear my grandfather complain about the price of chemicals, the price of water, a new insect infestation. He knew he needed to do something to combat these seasonal uncertainties. But the challenge behind all these problems was never knowing where to spend his resources to maximize his gains. To mitigate uncertainty, farmers overapply pesticides and fertilizers as preventative practices. American farmers spend around $40 billion a year on chemicals, 30% of their operating costs. This is bad for their bottom line, bad for the soil, and bad for the environment at large. They do all this, and they still lose 20% of their potential yield to pathogens. That's more than $100 billion in losses worldwide. This is reducing their revenues even as they spend more and more on chemical inputs. These crops are lost because by the time they can see the problem in the field, it's already too late to act. Unlike the home gardener, farmers cannot keep a close eye on thousands of acres. What farmers need is a way to identify specific stress early at the field scale. The solution to this problem is the plant itself, living sensors that identify stress. Now, this solution may sound far-fetched, but is in fact pretty straightforward. Plants are immobile. In order to protect themselves, their physiology has evolved over millions of years to react to stress. For example, if a bug starts to eat a leaf, the plant makes a chemical so it tastes bad. We create plants that communicate these physiological changes by coding fluorescent signaling capabilities into the plant's DNA. An example of our fluorescent signal is shown in these images. The plant on the left is a regular plant, and the plant on the right is a living sensor. To the human eye, they look identical, but when looked at with the right filters, the living sensor glows. That is the fluorescent signals. In this case, you can see the sensor plant giving off a yellow glow. Scientists have been using this technique for years to monitor plant stress in the lab. We have developed the technology to apply it to the field at the commercial scales. The fluorescent signals are detected remotely using a technology called solar-induced fluorescence, or SIF for short. SIF was developed by ecophysiologists to monitor fluorescence the plants naturally emit. We have adapted this technique to visualize our non-native signals. This enables us to monitor plants from ground-level cameras like ones mounted on tractors to drones or planes flying above, or even as far as space using satellites. Once the plant data is captured, it is analyzed to provide farmers actionable recommendations. By simply logging in, farmers will know exactly the status of their crops. There are many powerful advantages to using the plant as the sensor. One, no new hardware for farmers to deploy or maintain in the field. No changes to their operations. We integrate seamlessly with what farmers already do, plant and care for the crop. From speaking to farmers, this is the #1 barrier to adoption of new technology. We want to make life easier for farmers with technology that works for them. Finally, by tapping into the plant, our technology is adaptable to any stress the plant detects. No need for different sensors from different companies for different stresses. By using the plant as a sensor, we are a one-stop shop for plant health. In the last 18 months, we have turned this science fiction into reality. We have established a robust and efficient R&D pipeline to create living sensors to be tested in the field. We've also demonstrated that the signal produced by our plants is detectable by remote sensing when grown in either research fields or commercial tomato fields. And importantly, we have gained traction with both tomato and soybean farmers. 2 large tomato farmers growing over 10,000 acres of processing tomatoes are trialing our sensors in their fields. In addition, we have a large soybean seed producing partner helping us execute our vision. Our commercialization strategies are based on favorable new regulatory guidelines issued by the USDA. Short term, we plan to use sentinel plants for both soy and tomato. In this case, we strategically plant our sensors throughout the field to provide data for farmers. Think about a canary in a coal mine or a rose bush at the end of a grapevine. These plants will not produce fruit and not be harvested into the food and feed supply. Long-term, whole fields where every plant is a sensor. Our initial focus here will be soybeans, with corn and cotton to follow. The market for seed technology is substantial. I want to note that these numbers are for in-field revenue via seed sales. We expect there to be other revenue streams once we are collecting millions of acres of plant health data annually. Current seed technology covers over 400 million acres, representing a $2.6 billion revenue opportunity for InnerPlant. Adoption rates of genetically engineered traits has been very high with very low churn. Once you have a customer, they stay. There's no other company addressing the problem the same way we are. There are many different hardware and imaging companies, but our discussion with farmers has revealed that they haven't identified in-season value in external sensing technologies. Our main competitors are the agrochemical seed companies who prevail over the seed technology market and are incentivized to sell more chemicals. We see potential partners in the rest of the value chain, from independent seed companies that will distribute our technology and their seeds, to field data collection providers, companies that operate drones, planes, and satellites. We are already in contact with many of these players in the field as we design and execute our go-to-market strategy. Just like farmers worldwide, New York farmers lose crops and in-field stress. The New York State soybean growers list the need for solutions to white mold and sudden death syndrome infestation among primary objectives for their research. This dovetails perfectly with InnerPlant's current goals of identifying sensor for these diseases. Being able to enter into the New York soybean ecosystem will create synergies to achieve InnerPlant and soybean growers' goals of helping farmers combat yield loss to stress. New York also has a thriving viticulture industry with a substantial research community built up around it. This includes a new federal grapes genetics research lab at Cornell Agritech in Geneva. With this substantial research infrastructure in place as a resource, we see an opportunity to expand our sensor building efforts into this high value crop. Being able to integrate with the research community and local farmers would be an advantage for InnerPlant as we take on this endeavor. We envision our sensors helping New York farmers capture value by decreasing pest damage and reducing chemical use. No matter the price level, we will establish a robust research and development operation that will develop plant sensors. We see many opportunities to integrate our research with faculty at Cal's, as well as to use services like Cornell's renowned plant transformation facility. At the $250,000 level, we'll create 2 direct jobs developing soybean sensors. At the $500,000 level, we will start to develop grape sensors. This will add an additional 2 jobs to oversee that project. The $1 million level sees us add an additional researcher and a business developer, bringing the total to 6 jobs. Indirect jobs will come in the form of greenhouse and field support and collaborative research with the Cal's faculty. As we increase the amount of plants created, the more support we'll need for their care and maintenance. Again, our goal is to provide information to farmers that allows them to make more informed decisions that will increase yields while lowering chemical use. We have a strong cross-disciplinary team that excels at execution and shares a vision of helping farmers while protecting the environment. Shelley Arnab, the CEO, is a Stanford MBA and 3-time founder with experience throughout the food supply chain. I'm a plant molecular biologist with farming experience and 20 plus years of making plant sensors. Ari Kornfeld, Director of Detection, is an ecophysiologist, instrument designer, and pioneer of the SIF technology. Santiago Ferreira, Director of Product, has started 2 companies and was the first employee at Mexico's largest startup. Thank you for your time. We're excited to join forces with New York State and together give plants a voice.
Great job, InnerPlant. So you have 10 minutes of Q&A with our panel of judges, and I think Zoe Feldman's going to lead us off.
Indeed. Hi, Rod. Hi, Shelley. Thank you for making the time today. This was so fascinating. It made me a little nervous that putting sensors in plants and getting them to communicate with us means that the twilight zone is not too far away, where the singularity of plants will come and robot plants will take over. But Andrew assured me that won't happen. Rod, can you confirm that?
I will confirm that. Yes, 100%.
Thank you so much. I feel so much better. Now that we have that out of the way, this is so impressive. It's so unique. I've never seen anything like this before. We looked at your financial models and looked at kind of your kind of strat plan, I guess, for the next couple of years. What else needs to be done on your end to validate this process?
So there's, well, thank you, Zoe. Let's start there. A couple of things that we plan over the next, I would say, year and a half, 2 years. One is that as we make the sensors, we need to study them in the field as much as possible and then study them in more controlled environments. So we're trying to do both because we know that the sensors are early and we know they're specific, but we need to also integrate what that means for agronomical value and how do we create the most value out of that for farmers, because it's not always straightforward. The second thing is the right partnerships. So our go-to-market is essentially through partners, not selling directly to farmers. So we're targeting some of the larger seed companies because we want this embedded in the seed. And then on the high-value crops, we're targeting some of the supply chain players. Think about irrigation systems. How do you plug and play the solution? So essentially the entire system gets automated. And for the farmers, it's seamless because the driver of everything we do is seamless to the farmer, easy, automated, right? The future of agriculture.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Zoe. Laura Peterson, you're up next.
Okay, well, I'm the farmer. I know my fellow judges are sick of hearing me say that because I do that almost every time I ask a question, but I'm the one who actually, my husband and I have a farm and employees, and we do this every day. So I have a couple of questions. One is, if you were to put, and I assume that putting this in every seed and every plant would be the most ideal situation to give you the most information in the entire field. I could see there being some issues with some people on how that would be considered genetic modification. How are you addressing that? Is it actually a genetic modification, or how do you go about doing it so that it wouldn't be considered a genetic modification?
So as much as we want this in every plant, we also understand that different crops are going to be different. So if the crop is already genetically engineered, then we want it in every plant because it's essentially another trait, right? And that has less of an issue. And we can talk about the perception of it as well, because I think that's important for the future of agriculture. But let's leave that aside for a moment. We understand for high value crops mostly, and many other crops, that this will never be in every seed, and it shouldn't be because those are not genetically modified. So the idea is to create sentinels and use them as indicators. And as we continue to use them in the field, since the data is going to be valuable, as we continue to control it and collect it, we will have more and more insights. So the system will get better over time, but it won't be in every seed.
Then how do you go about actually reading the information that the plant is giving out? I saw the maps, but I guess I'm not clear on what's reading that information.
It's basically just a camera, right? It's you're taking a picture. It's a special camera, but that's how the information is given. So if you go over your field, you can take a picture of everything, but we'll only extract the fluorescence from the plants that fluoresce, right? The plants that are not modified don't have fluorescence in this band. So you'll just go through and you'll detect what fluoresces. And if it's mapped out, then we can put that, we can focus on those areas when you fly over, right? Or spend the right amount of time there.
So you'd have like a drone or something that would go over the field, or you could just take it from flat on the ground, just take a picture of your field with your camera? I'm not sure I understand exactly.
So the answer is all of the above. We're ubiquitous to the process of collecting data. So we're starting with an iPhone that's modified because it's the easiest approach, just getting to the field. From there, very likely would be a pole in the field around the sentinels, or it could be, if the drone solution makes financial sense because farmers use it in that way, then that could be done through a drone where it's out, it goes to the location of the sentinels, collects the data. For full fields, we want to go as far as satellite imagery because that makes it the most seamless. Wow. But again, we can put this on anything. The question is, what is the best application for each scale?
And each type of plant you use is going to show a color for drought or disease or insect. It's going to be, say, the same blue is going to be for drought and any plant, no matter what plant you put it in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that could be the case, but that we could do multiple colors for multiple stresses. What the colors will indicate may be some farmers may want certain stresses that, like, some crops may have some stresses they'd like and other ones different ones. And so different crops might have different sensors in them.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So they're not always exactly the same sensor then in each plant.
No.
Okay.
So we can create different detections, and we choose the detections based on what's the most value that could be created for that crop for the farmers.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'll let somebody else go next.
Thanks, Laura. Super cool. Pravina, I think you're next up.
Yeah. So I just want to make sure I understand. So I know we were talking about the data collection. You said, it could be easy from an iPhone to satellite imagery. Who is actually collecting the data? Or do you have a team going out there? Or you're expecting the farmer to do it, or your partner?
So we're cultivating the partnerships for that. When we implement the solution in the first generations with an iPhone, we'll be hiring ourselves people that work in the field. The reason we like the iPhone is because it's easy and it really does enable anyone to collect that data. In the second generations, we're going to design something automated. We already have that infrastructure. Again, there's just a decision of what is the best way to do it and what are the right partnerships. Depending on the partnerships, will very likely indicate the equipment, the amount of the frequency of data, and then what does it get fed into. When it comes to satellites, we do not want to launch satellites. So we're not interested in being in the hardware business. Sometimes you'd be surprised. Sometimes investors think we want to, but we don't. We want to be creating seed traits, which are technology, and we want to collect data, which is technology, and we want to find the right partnerships in the middle to scale this infrastructure. There's enough companies that have satellites. Our goal is to partner with one of them and then have them be our collection mechanism, and we'll be their biggest customer for agriculture because we can buy all those acres from them as part of the solution that we provide to the farmers. So it does streamline that way.
That's good. A person who used to work with people launching satellites, I agree with you. Don't do it unless you really have to. But one thing you guys keep talking about is data. Is the, I don't know, phase 4 or 5 looking at the data? Because you're going to have some phenomenal data analytics. And so have you thought about a model of what you're going to do around that? I know you're still getting the sensors out there, but keep saying data, and that gets me excited. So
I love that question. I really do, because that's the direction, right? We're thinking up until now, in general, for humans, we've been trying different things and looking at what happens in the field, and then we make decisions on what works. That can change. Once we collect this data, we will actually understand not a proxy of what the plant is experiencing, but what the plant is experiencing all the time, different stresses at the right timing. So the goal is to collect those data sets, and then the idea is to correlate those and sell them to people manufacturing the inputs to the farmers. So imagine for the first time understanding on a large scale, not in a lab environment, how diseases start, how they spread, how they go away, correlating that with active ingredients and building massive data sets. The companies that do discovery of chemicals or biologicals or any kind of input really can utilize and then create better products. Or insurance products that are based on risk, right? Everything in farming is risk. So the more data, the more knowledge, the less risk.
All right, I'm going to turn it over to our other judge who has a question. Thank you.
So Andrew, thank you so much, Ravina. Andrew, do you have a short question for our friends at InnerPlant?
Indeed, I do. Here in the Delmarva area, we are faced with the issue of saltwater intrusion. So we're starting to lose farmland due to the encroachment of salt water, and it's the wet, salty feet. And oftentimes this manifests itself by a white crust on the surface, but by then it's way too late. I'm assuming, based on the answer you gave Laura, that your pathogen and pest is agnostic. You can engineer a plant to do any type of fluorescence in the presence of one of these types of things. The genetics that you're constructing in the plants now, is this something that someone can then plant that plant and its offspring will have that same expression? Or is this something you're going to have to constantly calibrate?
Offspring should have it if the line breeds true. Right, so Yeah, you should be able to see if the
Cool.
seeds are coming, the salt tolerance is coming, or salty fields are getting salty over time.
Nice.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Great answer. Thank you, InnerPlant. Thank you, judges.